Okay, folks. I'm going to give you both 30 seconds for your opening remarks. I'm going to be putting the 10-second up, and I will cut you off if you go over the time. Okay? And we'll start, we would have started with Beju, but we'll start with Chris. And go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Lolis, and I'm running for president on Team Gold. A little bit about my past experience. I have heavy involvement in orientation week at the university, as well as quite a deal of experience with Fed's governance, sitting on committees under every executive portfolio, as well as with the university governance, both sitting on both Senate and the Board of Governors. Team Gold is all about making Feds matter. Myself, I'm about giving power back to students, so I look forward to explaining that in the next few minutes.
Thank you. Paula, go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Paula Clausen. I'm running for president on Team Fusion. I also have a different realm of experience from the colleges. I've been president of the St. Jerome Students' Union for the last 2 years, and I've gotten experience on the Board of Governors over there, and as well as Senate Council, and working with a number of students on governance review and communications. So that's what I'd like to bring to the table for Feds.
Thank you. And before we start our first question, I'm going to hand it over to introduce themselves, I guess. We have some guest players here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Natasha Pazega. I was the 2013-2014 VP Operations and Finance.
I'm Devin Drury. I was the 2013-14 Vice President Internal.
All right, so our first question is for Beju. Voter turnout for executive elections last year was approximately 11%, and many students have little knowledge about the impact that Feds has on student life. Do you believe that increasing engagement between students and Feds centrally is important? And if so, what tangible steps will you take to ensure this happens? Since Beju's not here, Chris, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, I definitely believe engaging with students is important, and engagement's difficult because no one really has a solid definition of what it is. For me, I would say you engage with students by making sure Feds does things that they care about. So on my platform, space is obviously a central tenet of what I plan to do, and having a new building referendum is definitely something that students are interested in. So I feel that if we do things that they really care about, something about orientation or a new building, that's how we get students engaged, by doing things that they actually care about. Thanks.
Time.
Paula? All right, Beju, so we have your first question. You'll have 1 minute to respond. Voter turnout for executive elections last year was approximately 11%, and many students have little knowledge about the impact that Feds has on student life. Do you believe that increasing engagement between students and Feds centrally is important? And if so, what tangible steps will you take to ensure this happens?
I definitely think it's important. Getting more students to vote means more students' voices are heard, and we actually get to know what students want and what to do next. How to make this work would be basically, one of our pillars is collaboration, is to work with is to work with the services, work with the clubs, work with all the people in Feds to really get the understanding of Feds out. If there's a lot of students out there that volunteer at things but don't necessarily show up to vote. So best thing to do is at least start with the group that is already understanding Feds, that are already here, to start pushing that further. And slowly it'll be like a trickling effect that'll affect everybody, and hopefully we get like 50%, because that would be amazing. That'd be really cool.
Great. Paula, you have 30 seconds.
So I think voter turnout is hugely important, but more important is engagement with our constituents. And I've talked in my platform extensively about how we can collaborate with the societies to build those better relationships with students. I think that they have a really good outreach on and a pulse on their student population, and Feds should be collaborating with them in order to engage students better, but also using that power to not only keep with the secularization of the faculties, but build a community amongst all 6 of them.
You'll now have 3 minutes for open debate. You each have 1 minute.
On the same time.
I think we all agree here, so I don't know what to debate about here.
This is your opportunity to ask each other about your platforms in relation to the question or open debate.
Does it have to be in relation to the question?
It's open debate.
Okay. So Chris, I guess I'll go.
Go for it.
Something in your platform you talked about was giving council more power, and you did mention in a previous debate that by giving council more power and by having those elections in the faculties, you would increase not only voter turnout but interest in the council positions. Do you really think that by giving more councillors power, and by definition, what does that power look like, will actually increase voter turnout and interest in those positions?
Absolutely. I feel that, right now when you ask students who are familiar with what council does and you ask them, what is it that happens day to day at council, they say, oh, they pass these boring policies that might have an effect 3 to 10 years down the line, but I don't really see the effects on, my student experience. If you give them control over, say, something like a space allocation in the SLC, then it's something that students see, this is going to affect me right now and it's going to affect me during my entire time here. So I need to make sure that the people who are getting into council and who are representing me are going to be representing for my best interest. So I definitely agree that we do need to give council more power because they are the voice of student opinion in feds.
Paula, you have 32 seconds, Chris 17, and Beju 1 minute.
This is a question for both of you, I guess. The imprint recently said there's positions on council that are just filled by people walking on because there's nobody competing against them, and we have empty positions. Kind of to do with the voter turnout. How do we get more students? How do you guys think we're gonna be able to get more students to show up and actually take these positions a little bit more seriously and kind of really be engaged?
So I don't think that giving council more power is the way to go, and I think that in order to get them more engaged, it's actually going to take time, and that's just a hard reality of it. I think that by making sure that our councillors right now understand the power that they already have, because I don't think they have a full understanding of that, they'll be able to not only engage with their constituents better, but build awareness of what it is exactly they do and have more students be interested in those positions.
I guess I just feel that the board is a group of 11 people who are told that they are supposed to do what they feel is in the best interest of students, whereas students council, their members are to do what they know that the students are telling them to do. They're actually the voice of students on council, so I think that it's proper that we do give them more power.
Paula has 7 seconds, Beju, you have 36. You don't have to use up the time, we can move on. Okay, next question.
All right, this next question is for Chris. Many students remain frustrated with the lack of student study space on campus. However, there are multiple buildings approved for creation over the next 5 years that include an increase in student collaboration space. The university has committed to conducting a space audit of campus through a space committee, and the data from the 2012-2013 new student building investigation is now up to 3 years old. How will you communicate student space options to students and ensure their needs are met in your proposed new student building plan?
So the problem with trying to find spaces that are currently existing on campus is that we're just getting the scraps that are left over from the university, in particular with the departments that are moving over to the East Campus, the former Blackberry buildings. Most of those spaces that are now being left have already been claimed by other departments, and what few spaces we can find for students, they're old decrepit rooms in MC, and they're not the type of rooms that students deserve on campus. So I strongly believe that students deserve to have their say if they want a new building or not. I don't feel that as an executive it's my right to say, no, I'm going to speak for all 30,000 students and they don't want a building. That's not what's best for them. I'm not saying that students need to have a building. I'm saying students need to have their voice heard on whether or not they have a new building.
Paula, you have 30 seconds.
So in my platform, I do talk about space a little bit. I think that the priority actually for the Federation of Students right now is that we should be going after the spaces that are being left behind by the university. They're in a bunch of buildings across campus, and they're not old and decrepit, and they've only filled 2 buildings at the Blackberry out of 5. So there's still a lot more spaces to become available. If we're not standing there going, we want this space, then we're going to lose out on that opportunity.
Beju, you have 30 seconds.
On this point, I have to agree with Chris. I I'm a big advocate, including in my platform, for the new building. I think it's not fair and it's not enough to just give you tables and space in a random area, being like, study space, you got it. That doesn't work because, first of all, for me, a big thing, as Danielle has worked on hers too, and that fell down, is mental health. And the only way to increase mental health, one of the best ways to increase mental health is to have a safe zone around you where you feel at home and safe. And
Time.
yeah.
There will now be 3 minutes of open debate, 1 minute each.
Okay, so Chris, I've looked a lot into this, and I'm not personally against a new building at all. And if students want to go to referendum, that's absolutely fine. But I don't think that we should be working on that all year. I think that making that a project for the entire year is technically a waste of time, and that instead we should be working on filling in those spaces, and we should be looking at setting a funding target so students aren't paying for the whole thing. In terms of the buildings that are currently coming up, there's a new residence building coming up, a Haggie Hall expansion, AHS, the Science Teaching Complex, and E7. And just with a little bit of research, they total to an actual amount of 157,000 square feet of student space, which is only 25% of the actual square footage of those buildings. And that is far more than the 60,000 that the university currently negotiated with Noble a couple of years ago. So how can you say that these new buildings, with the space that's becoming available, paid for by the university, is like not good enough in comparison to the 60,000 square feet you're suggesting?
Time, Paula.
First of all, I'm not suggesting 60,000 square feet. I don't know where you're getting that number from. Andrew Noble's work a few years ago is a great starting point, but it's not to say that we're just going to follow that to the T. With regards to the new buildings, these buildings are being built because enrollment has increased every single year, and there's no reason at all to think that the university won't be increasing enrollment in the future. Every year they will increase more and more students. So these new buildings aren't providing more space per student, they're just trying to catch up to the increasing demand for student space as more students are coming onto this campus. We need a central building that is dedicated to students and not space that is just, cramped in the corner of these buildings whose primary purpose in many cases is classroom space. So I feel that we actually need a building dedicated just for students and not, again, taking the scraps of what the university will give us.
I fully agree with Chris in the terms that with the new building, it would be a space for students and students only. We don't need faculty. We don't need anybody else taking over space. This is, like Chris says, we don't want the leftovers. We don't need the leftovers. We are students. We are a major part of this university. Heck, we make up most of the university. We need a space for ourselves. And since this building was built, enrollment's at a new level, right? So it's just obvious, and even the university realizes it. So we need to realize it that pushing for a new building is one of the most important things that we need to get done.
Okay, next question.
So this question is for Paula. Council has multiple empty seats. Currently, all positions with nominees were acclaimed, and the board of directors deals with major decisions of the organization, which is currently serving as a management body over the executive. How will your accountability framework and training solve the issues of lack of clarity in roles and responsibility and accountability? You have 1 minute.
So I think there's two parts to it. The first is that currently the board of directors is doing what council should be discussing. I don't think the board of directors is being as effective as it could be right now, and I'm one of those directors. So I would like to see the board of directors be, I think, more refined in exactly what it is they can discuss, and the membership of that needs to change. As for council, I think that they don't understand the actual power that they already have. And by building accountability between the societies in terms of, we have a St. Jerome's counselor right now, we've test driven, and the St. Jerome's counselor has a seat on the St. Jerome Students Union. And they are held completely accountable by our team and our constituency to advocate for St. Jerome students' needs at the council level. And if they're able to do that, then I think other counselors can do the same.
Pedro, you have 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, for that situation, I think just taking my HR background, job descriptions. We need to figure out what each position means, each position entails, and find those holes, fill those holes with the right people, or just reallocate job specifications to the right place. So if we find holes between where council and board doesn't really link up, it could be a lot easier if we know exactly what they are entitled to do and what they need to do. That's, I think, the basic thing that we need to do next.
Chris, you have 30 seconds.
So maybe in the open debate you can explain more, but did I hear you say that board is having discussions that council should be having? I agree. Council should be having those discussions and then empowered to actually take action on them. And that's entirely what my platform is about. Furthermore, if you want to define the roles clearly between council and board, I can tell you if you really do define them, you're going to end up looking that, all right, council has very little to do and all of the power in feds lies within the board of directors.
Time. You now have 3 minutes of open debate.
So yeah, I did say that. I think that right now it's not a matter of giving council more power. They have a lot of power and they just don't know what to do with it, or they don't understand exactly to what extent that power is. And so instead, it should be a matter of making sure that they are figures in their constituency and that students know who they are. So you go over to science or you go over to AHS and you go, who's your counselor at council? Nobody knows. And it's a matter of making those people relevant in their constituency.
I consistently hear that there's power in council and there's power in board. Like I just said, the problem is we don't understand where all the power or where any of the power really lies. And the best thing to do is if we actually figure out who needs to be doing what, we can actually streamline all possible questions and projects. And basically, to start, it'd be not a rehaul, but it would just be kind of an understanding, and it could help anyone and everyone involved in feds to really understand where their questions and problems should be taken to and fixed. With board and council, they're both big governing bodies that they do a lot, of course, and they just need to really be reassigned to exactly what they should be doing and really understand what they're doing. Yeah.
So Paula, you talk about how council has power that they don't have, and the solution to that is to go and talk to their constituents more and have more engagement. But you're identifying one problem and trying to solve a different one. If they're more engaged with their faculties or with their constituents, that's not going to give them any more power that they don't already have. They have very little power. And you said that you're a director, and I'm chair of the board of directors, and I'm telling you, these 11 people have far too much control over the Federation. Thank you.
Paula, you have 30 seconds. Chris, 25. Beju, 14. We good? Okay, next question.
This next question is for Beju. Feds has turnover of their executive team every year and has had concerns in the past of maintaining a long-range plan and strategic plan. Our long-range plan for the next 5 years will be adopted at the February Board of Directors meeting. How would you implement a long-range plan to ensure that it becomes part of the organization's foundation?
Basically, thinking about what I've been saying and what I'm running with right now is the platform of the 4 pillars. All 4 pillars are built to create a system where we can prolong what we believe in, what everyone believes in, for a longer period of time. If we communicate with our students, we work together, if we're fair about it and we're responsible in what we do, a 5-year plan, it might as well be like a 10-year plan. It would be something that we could actually stand behind for a long period of time. And the best way for us to do it is to work collaboratively with everyone around us and really understand what the students truly want.
Chris? So the problem with the long-range plan is that priorities for the organization can change very quickly, and if you have an elected official such as the executive come in on a different platform that kind of contradicts the long-range plan, then you kind of have to go with what the democratic process has selected, and that this person ran on a platform that may not fully align with the long-range plan, but you have to follow what the people have chosen.
So I'm actually on the committee that's been working on the long-range plan, and what's most important is that all executive and any candidate who's running in further elections should know that that long-range plan had a lot of student engagement. And if you have a platform that doesn't relate in the slightest to that long-range plan, then you're not actually meeting the needs of students, and my platform does that. So
there's now time for open debate.
So I agree that, I did also see the long-range plan when I was a director and when it came to the general meeting in October. So I also agree that my platform does address a lot of the needs of the long-range plan. And as far as, making sure that it gets enforced, I think that's the responsibility of the board of directors, and that they should be approving the executive action plans before they get released to make sure that the executive goals for the year are in somewhat alignment with what the long-range plan has set out for them.
I would agree with that statement.
Okay, next question. Feel free to use this time to ask each other anything.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? Is there
Sure.
going to be open debate at the end?
No.
Okay, so if I have a question,
Yes.
I have to go. Got it.
Moving on. So this question is for Chris. Currently, FEDS has difficulties within its own governance structure in terms of training, engagement, and responsibility, as well as not all of our governance review recommendations have been investigated or attempted. How will you effectively spend student money in terms of your time on a government's body that you have no authority over and is within the university's governance?
Sorry, the last part about
Structure. Sorry, there was more to the question. I'll just ask the whole question again. Currently, FEDS has difficulties within its own governance structure in terms of training, engagement, and responsibility. As well, not all of our governance review recommendations have been investigated or attempted. How will you effectively spend money in terms of your time on a government's body that you have no authority over and is within the university's governance structure? As well, how will your training and preparatory meetings be differentiated from the training held by the university?
This is in relation to Senate.
So the problem with training by the university is that it's very one-sided, because obviously students are, for the most part, going to be on one side of an issue if the university is bringing up something else, like the weather closure guidelines. So if you only rely on training from the university, then you're only going to have a very one-sided issue with that. The training that students need is to understand how they're going to go about collecting feedback from students when they go into those Senate meetings, making sure that all the senators are on the same page on the issue so that they have a full understanding of any student concerns about it. And having those preparatory meetings will help ensure that when students enter that room, they have a unified voice, because as someone told me recently, when two faculty disagree, then it's seen that, okay, they both have valid opinions. When two students disagree in the Senate room, it's seen that, okay, the students don't even know what they want. We have to make the decision for them.
Paula?
So I don't disagree that training for senators is good, but I think that within Team Fusion's plan, Ben has highlighted a better way in which we can train all volunteers and part-timers who work for us, and that can also include senators and student representatives. So I think that they need to understand also what FEDS does and what the goals are of the organization before they start advocating for students at the university level as well.
Thank you.
As for the later part of the question, the point, to make a difference, you don't need authority. You just need to be able to advocate and really push for what the students need. So as a president, the job would be not necessarily to use your authority in places, because using your authority is like throwing around power. It doesn't really make a difference. What really makes a difference, understanding what students want, taking that and actually working to make a change. Having authority will just be like, do it. No, what we got to work on is we work together, we know what we all want, and let's push as hard as we can
Time.
to do that.
We now have 3 minutes of open debate.
So I'm extremely concerned that you would suggest having the same training for FEDS volunteers and part-time staff be given to the senators. The senators for students do not report to FEDS, and they cannot be given the same training that a part-time staffer does. They're completely independent of FEDS. Sometimes that means that they have to disagree with FEDS because they're there representing their constituents. And if their constituents disagree with FEDS, then they cannot be held accountable to FEDS. They have to be held accountable to their constituents.
So I'm not suggesting that they get the exact same training. What I'm suggesting is that training in itself is a unique phenomenon, and having professional development to all volunteers and all part-timers is very, very important. We have to be able to offer the people who do amazing work for the organization something in return. And so tailoring specific training to each of those people, whether it's senators or volunteers or part-timers, is really important. Senator training is going to be very different than a volunteer who works in the food bank. Then nonetheless, still important, and I think that committing time and effort and money towards training is very important.
I sort of agree with Paula in the sense that training, like everyone should have the same basic training to understand what the same, like everyone should be able to understand the same goals for all of feds and really be able to hit the main targets that are affecting each and every volunteer. Of course, every single situation like OCC, Food Bank, Senate, everybody has a slightly different job role. With outlined job roles, we know what they need, and training can be geared to just what they need, plus the basic training that everyone else has, so we can actually work collaboratively and work as a group to make our goals heard and finished.
So first I heard that you liked Ben's idea about his training, and then you clarified and said that it's going to be different than the volunteer, and it's going to be unique, which is exactly what I have in my platform, which is training targeted directly for senators. So I'm just confused at how at all is this different than what I'm suggesting in my platform?
So I don't think there's anything wrong with what you suggest in your platform, but the fact that it's in the president's platform and that you think that that's a project that's going to take the entire year to accomplish concerns me as a constituent. So I'm just suggesting that having a comprehensive training program that not only includes senators but others is a little bit more important. You have 13.
So my platform points do not necessarily take the entire year. I intend to have this training done during the summer term so that the senators can have that training for the rest of their term in office.
Time.
How much time did we have?
You have 10 seconds. You have 22, Beju. Okay, next question.
This question is for Paulo. A lot of concerns raised in this year's election and in a lot of candidates' platforms talk about communication. Feds currently communicates all major media through its own website, as well as the student newspaper and other external media sources. We also have multiple social media platforms and the occasional permission to mass email students. Since there are multiple sources of communication currently taking place, how will your communications plan help solve the root problem of actually reaching students and engaging them to interact with feds?
So the first and foremost, I guess you could say, flagship of communications in my platform is that we do need a new website, and that is the #1 concern that I've gotten from students when I was building my platform. I have experience in this area. I work in marketing and communications, and I've worked on the university's website, and what I'm proposing is that we have a content management system that allows multiple users to be on the back end, and it can be maintained and controlled by our marketing department. That would save time for our marketing and communications department that they can hopefully put towards other things. Because currently some of our social media pages are going idle for days at a time. So it's really important to me that those things get picked up again, and right now what's logging them down is the fact that they are continuously updating content on our website, a site that's not functional for them right now, and a site that really does need to be upgraded.
As for a site, I think that's a later thing to worry about. Right now, the issue is people know that the site exists, they use it, yeah, but the biggest thing is not enough engagement. As we can see from our voting, as we can see from like a lot of situations where enough students don't understand and know what Feds does. So Mikey and I, we were talking at the previous debate with talking about how we want to create more blogs. We want to do like bi-weekly blogs. We want to do more. What do we do?
So the website is also on Team Gold's platform. It just falls under Carly's position as she is the candidate running for VPOF, especially because both marketing and communications department and the IT department in Feds fall under the VPOF portfolio. So it concerns me greatly that a president would have it on her platform, and it concerns me because I'm worried that you would be stepping on the toes of the VPOF to get the website done.
Open debate.
So just to address that, in terms of either Team Fusion or Team Gold, Carly's got it under her platform, and this is something that Ben has already started. So they've already gotten to the point in which they now have 3 feasible options, and we need to make a decision. And that's something that will be made before I even start my term. So I'm not looking to step on the VPOF's toes. I'm looking to collaborate with that person. That being said, campus-wide communications comes within the president's portfolio, and it's definitely important that the face of the Federation of Students is heavily involved with campus-wide communications, because otherwise it would fall apart.
Except the website is run by IT and marketing communications, which is the VPOF portfolio.
I think the point of a CEO or a president of an organization is PR, one of the biggest points. And public relations is how we are seen as feds. I kind of want to agree with Paula in saying that it should be a job that's a collaboration with both the president and the VPOF, because it is under the VPOF's portfolio, but the president needs to be there to actually help understand what they think and take student engagement and bring it to the table and show all the execs, show everybody that we know we can hear what the students want and show that this is what you want, here you go. It's about delivery and PR.
Yeah. What are you going to go for?
I'm taking it in a different direction.
Go for it.
Okay, so I have a different direction to take this. So under the Federation of Students, there is a single department in Feds that reports directly to the president. One department. That department is the orientation department. Paula, I have not seen in your platform a single mention of orientation, nor have you mentioned it a single time during these debates. It's fine if you have opinions about orientation, you don't like it. I'm not suggesting you do, but some people do, and it's fine if you think that, but you cannot pick and choose which parts of this portfolio you're going to do. You need to address it and have some kind of plan because it is your responsibility.
How much time do I have?
You have 29 seconds.
So the reason it's not in my platform is because I was a St. Jerome's St. Jerome's Orientation Week leader, and in that role I had an amazing experience, and I didn't realize some of the problems that some of our Orientation Week leaders were facing. I did meet with Becky Rowe, and I do understand that that's part of my portfolio, and I'm definitely willing to advocate for things that they need. But that being said, I want the experience that I had at St. Jerome's to not have those fees and to be building community, to expand over onto main campus, and
Time. Okay, that's the end of the president's debate. So we're going to call up. Oh, we're going to have some audience questions, 2 audience questions. I'm going to walk around with the mic.
Hi, my name is Chanakya, and we were talking just about orientation, and during the orientation I saw Danielle made a speech to first-year students trying to get them engaged to feds and campus life and all of that. So if you had 30 seconds to make a spiel to first years who just came here and orientation week is going on, what would you say?
Obviously, I would start off with water, water, water in response to. All right, I'm going to continue because I'm running out of time. Basically, I would show that the students are here because they want to be here. It's the University of Waterloo. They chose our university. And I want to show them that, look, just by getting in, by being a student, doesn't mean you're done with the University of Waterloo. Come out. We're all working with each other, for each other. Show up. Be a part of Feds. Be a part of orientation. Have fun. And be a leader.
So I once attended an orientation conference in Ohio, and we had representatives from 3 states in Ontario there, students and staff. And at one of the sessions, the leader asked everyone in the room, all right, if you can give one piece of advice to a first-year student or a new student, what would it be? Every single person in the room at the same time said the same 2 words, which were get involved.
So I was going to say the same thing. Get involved will be the very first thing that I say, and it's very important that students understand how many different things there are to get involved within the Federation of Students and on campus through the university. And so that would be my goal. But also, I think just building spirit. Right now, we hear a lot from our varsity teams that they'd love to see more people in the stand. The Warrior Tribe's doing amazing work, and I'd like to keep up with that. So.
Okay, we have the second question.
So, if you were not elected, who would you prefer to see elected into this position and why?
We'll let Paula answer first.
Can I clarify the question? So if I'm not elected, who out of these 2 would I like to see?
Yes.
Okay. If I'm not elected, I'd like to see Chris elected. He's been a great leader on the board of directors. That being said, I definitely would like to be elected more.
Okay. I have to agree with Paula. I've worked with Chris with orientation as well. We interacted a lot in day-to-day life. We get along as friends. And as I do with Paula too, I love you too. But I think just because a building is like one of my main points, I really want to see that, rise. And Chris, you'd be my number 2.
Why are you asking this question? All right, if I had to go with person, I would say Beju, simply because I do think the building is such a huge priority for students on campus, and he has committed to it. So if I had to choose, and it would be a very close 2 and 3, I promise.
Okay, so that's now the end of the president's debate. We're going to move on to the VP Education. Stefan, can you please go up to the front? Thanks. Oh, you're right. Closing statement. Stephen caught it. Closing statement. You have 30 more seconds each to talk. I know you all thought you were gone there, but we're putting you on the spot. Beju, you can start.
As for my closing statement, I want to say what I want to bring to the table is student engagement. I want to make students come out. I want to bring what they have to say, bring what they think, and bring it to life. If feds can be more student engaged and with everybody being a contributing member, it'd be amazing. And as president, I hope to advocate for the right things that students want and really work to make more students come out and be a part of the feds.
Chris?
So I've been involved in feds quite a bit over the past few years, as well as university governance. I really think that I know how both feds and UW works, and I know how to get things done within the bureaucracy of these two bodies. I've seen feds at its best, and I've seen feds at its worst, and I just want to do everything I can to give back to the students of this campus because I've had such a great time here at UW. So remember, please vote gold. Chris for president. Stefan. Matt and Carly.
Running on Team Fusion has been really awesome for me. Building our platform was with heavy student engagement, and I'm really proud of the platform that we've put forward. It's tangible ideas that we believe we really can accomplish in that one-year term, and I'd really like to be elected solely on that alone. If you take a strong look at those platforms and you say, what do you want to accomplish next year, those are my priorities, and that's what I'm committing to getting done. So vote Team Fusion, vote Paula.
Thank you. Okay, now that you all have been put through the test like 3 times, you may now leave the stage. I am 100% sure. Okay, Stefan, so like I said, you will be asked your opponent's questions as well, to be given 30 seconds to answer each of those. I like how entertained you are already, and you haven't even heard the questions. You have 30 seconds for opening remarks.
So I'm Stefan Hamadeh. I'm running for Vice President Education on Team Gold. So this year I want to build on successes of the VP Ed portfolio, and I want to work on things such as student academic rights, an ombudsperson office, tuition fees, co-op fees, increasing co-op unemployment, and student-led advocacy. With the rest of my team, I really want to make sure that we can make feds matter.
Thank you.
Okay, so our first question will be for David. A large portion of the VP Education role involves strategic advocacy and stakeholder relations. How will you use diplomacy in your strategy to advocate to the university and the different levels of government to improve the student experience? Since David is not here, Stefan, you will have 30 seconds to respond and then 1 minute for open debate.
So this year, I think we've been fairly effective at establishing a lot of the relationships at the different levels of government, and the stakeholder relations position has been very helpful with that as well. I think developing those relationships with each of the levels of governments through meeting with them several times this year, and being able to actually make a lot of headway on a lot of our efforts has been a really good way of creating that diplomacy and that kind of thing that we're looking to achieve.
You have now 1 minute if you would like to raise any further points.
So I think that we can still go even further this year and build on the relationships that have been built. I think trying to ensure that we have even more regular meetings with all the levels of government and potentially even just scheduling it for the whole year right at the beginning could be very effective. And making sure that we do the same thing also with the university and working with the rest of the executive team to make sure that we are knowledgeable. I think the student-led advocacy team, the advocacy support team will be very effective for that as well, to get other students in front of the decision makers, because they'll be able to bring their own perspectives and be able to hopefully fix a lot of their issues, such as potentially cafeteria, when the cafeteria is open, pack lockers not being working. So I think with the advocacy support team, we're going to be able to do a lot of great work as well in this area.
So this question is for Stefan. Putting more student opinions in front of decision makers, as well as pushing our governance engagement into the faculties rather than through student consultation, how are you going to ensure that there is consistent and meaningful message being presented to decision makers? You have 1 minute.
I think that if a student does have a concern and it is potentially a little bit smaller, that they should be able to just go speak to the university. And I think that's going to then result in a higher quality education for everybody. Obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if in some cases they then turn to us and say, how do you feel about this one, especially for much bigger changes. In terms of the societies, I think that they'll also be doing student consultation. As a former society executive, a lot of the times when we were making decisions, we did go to the societies. I know as MassLock president, we did run a survey on the fall break. We did do other survey and consultation work as well to make sure that what we were advocating for was in the students' best interest. So the faculty's societies are very able to do advocacy, and enabling them to do that would be something I think that would be very, very effective. And I think that's very important. And yeah.
So you still have 1 minute because I'm including your open debate time here.
So I think my opponent would agree, he's not here, but that the societies are very able to advocate. I think we've seen in the past that that they can make real change. I know from speaking to a lot of the president, vice president educations or academics of societies who do meet with their deans or associate deans on a very regular basis, that they do take their feedback or criticism very, very seriously, and that they are able to enact change. And I've seen that personally when I was president of MassLock. We changed all of the calculator policy, which affected all students, mostly math students, but a lot of other students also used those as well. So I think enabling the societies to do great work would be, and training them would make them even more effective. And I think that's something I've started this year, but...
Time.
Yeah, okay.
This next question is for David. What does transparency mean to you? Stefan, because David is not here, you will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond.
So I don't get the cut in the middle? Okay. All right. So transparency for me is very important. It means the way, board and council interact with students, the way in general that we make sure that students are aware of what we're doing. The committees I sit on, Governmental Affairs Advisory Committee and Education Advisory Committee, they are open. The time when they meet is in my report. I hope that more students are able to attend, but unfortunately they're not always able to. And I think it's really through, especially for the VP Ed portfolio, the way we can increase transparency is really through raising the profile in marketing. And that's something that Carly really would like to work on, and I think that would really facilitate transparency on the university's part, on government's part, and on Fed's part. To make sure that what we're advocating for, students are aware about, which would make us and all those other bodies previously mentioned much more transparent to students. And I think that it's obviously very important that that happens. And I really believe that Carly can make that happen.
This question is for Stefan. The VP Education role is very external to the organization, in that it doesn't interact through your employment duties with a lot of our staff on a regular basis. As well, this position is elected from the general campus population without any prerequisites for experience or knowledge base. Why should students trust that you are capable to lead the discussions on major student-facing issues such as rising tuition?
So in terms of tuition, I think a lot of the experience with USA has helped me. And even before that, I mean, I had experience with CASA, I had some experience with USA, I had experience advocating through math. I think the experience is very clear for me on that one, that there is significant advocacy experience. As well on things like rising tuition, making sure that USA looks at that. USA has a lot of the experience in terms of advocacy that we can work on, and I think that we can then use that to further the concerns of Waterloo students. Can you repeat the question?
The VP Education role is very external to the organization, in that it doesn't interact through your employment duties with a lot of our staff on a regular basis. As well, this position is elected from the general campus population without any prerequisites for experience or knowledge base. Why should students trust that you are capable to lead the discussions on major student-facing issues such as rising tuition?
I think on the other side too, in terms of making sure that what we're saying represents students, I mean, that's part of the reason why we do have elections, but also consultation through GAC, through AAC, through council is very important. And everything that's advocated for usually goes through at least a committee and potentially council. And for things like fall break, we even went to referendum. So I think it's through the whole process of advocacy, we are doing a lot of consultation with students to make sure that what we're advocating for is in the best interest of students.
Just so you know, you have 42 seconds, but you don't have to use it all.
Vote gold.
Thank you, Stefan. So we have closing statements and then audience questions. So if you want to give your closing statements.
You want to do audience questions first, potentially?
Can you please give your closing statements?
Thanks, Danielle. Okay, so Gold's vision is around making feds matter. If you check out our team's platform, we have increasing marketing and advocacy, reducing costs for Bomber, student-led advocacy through the advocacy support team, which will really help to put students in front of decision makers, and finally empowering Students' Council. I mean, there are many other examples in our platform, and I really think that you should go check it out. And remember to vote from February 10th to 12th, and vote Gold.
Okay, do we have 2 questions from the audience? I see 1. Do we have a second? Chanakya, number 2. So you'll have 30 seconds, Stefan, to answer each question. We're just going to grab you a working mic. Always turning it up.
So, given the impact of the fall reading week, would you consider a spring reading week as well for similar reasons?
I've actually been asked that question a lot, and I think the reason why fall was so important is because of the only day we have off in fall right now is Thanksgiving, whereas you see in summer that there are the Civic Holiday, Canada Day, which sometimes gives you 2 days off, and the Victoria Day long weekend. I think we could explore a summer break, but for the moment, I think the real priority and when the pressure cooker is the fall term.
So, you mentioned you are transparent, and Kumar and I had a question, like, how are you more transparent than David Bourmont? We don't even see him. Did you get... One more time? Okay. Okay. So, you mentioned you are transparent, and Kumar and I had a question. We can't even see David Birnbaum, so how are you more transparent?
So I think the key is right now, you can't even see me either, so I think I'm pretty transparent as well.
No,
but on a more serious note, I think transparency is very important. And I think continuing to use the committees and for major decisions, a referendum like Chris is doing as well, really increases transparency for the organization.
No, serious question.
Chanakia, I'm just going to cut you off at 1. Sorry.
Let me know after if you have any questions, and that goes for everybody.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the VP Education debate. Next up, we have VP Operations and Finance. Can we get those candidates at the front, please? Hilarious. Yeah, what's up? No, it was just OS and...
Thank you.
So you'll have 30 seconds for opening remarks. We're going to start with Ben and then Carly. So Ben, whenever you're ready.
Thanks. So my name is Ben Balfour. I'm running again for Feds VPOF with Team Fusion. Thanks, Mike. I'm running again because I've seen many positive changes over my year, and I'm excited to make more positive impacts for students. My experience as current VPOF would be critical in ensuring that I reach the lofty goals that I've set in my platform. And my goal is to make Feds a valuable part of students' lives by making it efficient and responsive.
Thank you. Carly?
Hi, my name is Carly McCready. I'm also running for Vice President Operations and Finance of Feds, and I'm running with Team Gold. I'm here because I really want to see Feds go back to being a student union and serving students first. So I'm really here to make Feds matter in the eyes of students. I wish there were more people here at the debate, and I think by doing that I can provide unique services to students and make sure that in all aspects, including our business operations, we're serving students first.
So we'll start with our first question. This question's for Ben. A concern in the past elections for your current role was the lack of specific action items in your platform. In your current executive action plan, you had committed to implementing a governance structure for SLC, a brand audit, and improving communications between staff. With your current platform being very action-heavy, how can you ensure that the work you have done will support your ambitious list of ideas? You have 1 minute.
So the work that I've done this past year is really all about laying the foundation to make the organization more efficient and more responsive. As I said, last year I was preaching all about efficiency, and I'm still up here saying the exact same thing. So by creating a governance structure surrounding SLC space decisions, we can make sure that student input is being gathered. By improving communications among staff, we created a departmental managers meeting, which is now held weekly, improves the communication within the organization and makes sure it's efficient. And talking about a brand audit, making sure that we really understand what our brand is and what students want our brand to be, so that we are communicating clearly with students so that they are aware what Feds is and how it can help them.
Carly, you have 30 seconds.
Okay. So it concerns me a little bit that you spend an entire year laying the groundwork for something that's going to happen, and that you're up here because you believe in the same things, because the reason I'm up here is for new ideas and to see changes within Feds, because Feds' biggest problem is that students don't really like them, and I'm here to change that by making Feds matter to students.
You'll now have 2 minutes of open debate. You'll each have 1 minute.
Just in response to that, Carly, I'm really interested to hear your comments about how your desires to make Feds better is different than any other candidate in the past. I'm sure certainly within the 2 elections that I've been involved with, as well as many elections in the past, everybody comes up here and preaches about how they want Feds to be better and Feds to be likable for students. So I just wonder, what tangible things are you really going to change in a matter of a year? Because certainly within my experience, this is a large moving organization, and it's very difficult to affect that change in 1 year.
Right, so I think that there's a reason that we have yearly terms for these positions is that there are changes that can be accomplished within a year. And one of the things on my platform is creating a commercial services evaluation committee to make sure that there's no way right now for students to have an active role in saying what they want from our commercial services. And I think that our commercial services should serve students above and beyond what is available in the plaza. And we shouldn't be owning commercial services just for the sake of owning commercial services. They should be serving students, and my evaluation committee will make sure that they're what students want. So I think that's something that's key in my platform and how I hope to affect change.
Do I have time?
You have 16 seconds left. Carly, you have 18.
So I'm concerned that you believe that the commercial services are the only reason that feds exists. The services are run as services for students. They're not meant to make profit. They're not meant to support the organization in any way.
Right, so I definitely believe, and I've said this before, that the commercial services are one aspect of why feds exist, but they definitely shouldn't be the most important. And that's what they are right now. If you ask people what does feds do, they say they run the bomber, but I don't think that's justification for feds existing.
You have like 1 second each, so I'm going to cut you off there.
Thank you.
All right, this next question is for Carly. The bomber serves all members of the campus community at an affordable rate that is meant to break even and not generate revenue. It is designed as a service for students who have the opportunity to use it anytime during business hours. Majority of your platform points in this section involve segregating groups to point affecting service. How will you strive to make an inclusive environment at all of our commercial services? You'll have 1 minute to respond, then if you could please speak a little closer to the mic.
So I think I'm a little bit confused in that part of my platform is making the bomber more inclusive to students, and that right now the programming that's run Tuesday to Thursday is 19 plus. And I'm a residence life Dawn, and my students ask me like, hey, what can I do tonight? And what I would be doing and the things I enjoy are going to Trivia Thursday, and they can't do that. And so part of my platform is opening those up, and I actually put in a request with IAP, and in the fall term, last term, 16.5% of our students were under 19. And that's a huge, huge portion of our students that we are not serving at the bomber at night. And I think that they're really important. It's really important to get students into bomber at the beginning so they can be engaged with our community. And the events at bomber are very well run, and they're some of my favorite activities here on campus. And I think opening those up to first year students is really important, and we should be serving them along with the rest of our constituents.
Do I have 30 seconds, or
Yes,
are we in
30
open
seconds.
debate?
You have 30 seconds, and then it's open debate.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
The bomber serves all members of the campus community at an affordable rate that is meant to break even and not generate revenue. It is designed as a service for students who have the opportunity to use it anytime during business hours. The majority of your platform points in this section involve segregating groups to a point of affecting service. How will you strive to make an inclusive environment at all of our commercial services?
I really think that what Feds has been doing up until this point in terms of gathering feedback has been incredibly effective and has made the commercial services responsive to students' needs. So by using comment cards and online feedback forms, we've been able to receive feedback from the consumers that are using the service and therefore ensure that we are meeting their needs.
You now have 1 minute each for open debate.
So the issue with comment cards, right, is that you're only getting feedback from consumers, like you said, right? So my students who can't attend bomber, how are you getting their feedback? They can't fill out a comment card at Trivia Thursday because they're not able to attend.
But they are able to use the bomber at any other time. So I guess a question for you in terms of the 19 plus, how will you mitigate risk of underage drinking when you have an operation that is licensed to sell alcohol? I'm just curious how you'll mitigate that risk.
Right, so I'm all in favor of adding extra security and incurring that cost if that's what we need. But if you go to many bars and restaurants that serve alcohol, you can go in there after hours without being 19 plus, and they'll ID you at the table. The bomber serves alcohol all day long, and people can go in there if they're not 19. So I think it's workable definitely to allow these students in, and it's worth any sort of mitigation of risk to serve these students.
So I guess what I have the benefit of having in terms of the experience as BPOF is that we sign a liquor license along with the university. And the university, as part of the bar directorate, sets the standard for what risk is acceptable within the events that we're holding. And I know for a fact that it will require an army of security guards in that bomb shelter in order to have the university on our side to mitigate that risk. And those costs will be incurred by the bomber, and therefore we can offer less services, like free event bookings for students.
I think by adding extra patrons to the bomber, we can regain some of that cost. I've been to Open Mic Night. It's a great event, but it's not very well attended, and by bringing in first-year students, they can help cover the cost of them being there. I think it's very important that we serve these students no matter what.
You have 3 seconds, Ben, and 1 second, Carly, so I'm going to move on.
So this next question is for Ben. Currently, the Student Life Center is at capacity for student space, and students regularly eat in stairwells and on the floor. As well, currently, all of our internal organizational space needs haven't been met. How will your increased food options in SLC work with the current building capacity and be differentiable, as we currently do offer halal, vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free? You have 1 minute.
So one of the biggest indicators from the SLC space audit was that students want just a greater variety of food. One of the options that we've been throwing around and from a management perspective is adding an addition to the campus bubble wasabi outlet. So in terms of the space need, that is certainly a space that can be used for that commercial service. To address how we will ensure that we're meeting new needs, that comes from student feedback. So engaging with students, whether through surveys, whether through comment cards, ensuring that we are getting the maximum amount of student feedback to ensure that we're making informed decisions.
Carly, you have 30 seconds.
So are you looking at an expansion onto where Campus Bubble and Wasabi already exist in that space? I just think that adding another commercial service is not what students want. I think it would make much more sense to repurpose the services we have into having them expand their food options, if that's something that students are interested in.
So you now have 1 minute each of open debate.
So in terms of repurposing our current commercial services, I'm really not, like in terms of the bomb shelter, it's set up to be a pub. It would take hundreds of thousands of dollars to change that. Same goes for Campus Bubble Wasabi. Those are set up in a certain way to operate that way. So I'm wondering how you will work to do that.
So my comment was more in terms of creating a new commercial service and eating up more SLC space that we don't have, to create a new commercial service rather than offering an increased variety of foods at the services that already exist. I know that Campus Bubble and Wasabi are great services, but you can also get that food in the plaza. So what I'd really like is to get student feedback, and you're mentioning again comment cards, which again only address customers who are currently using the service. So in my platform, I'd like to create a commercial service evaluation committee that contains at-large members and members of council, so that each commercial service is reviewed annually based on student input whether or not they're using that service. So I reject the idea of using more SLC space to create an additional commercial service without looking at our current commercial services to see how those could offer a variety of foods.
All right, this next question is for Carly.
Were we done there? We have 30 seconds left for Ben and 8 for Carly. Are you guys done with your time?
All right. There are approximately 9 different areas of the organization who co-report to this role, as well as the general manager of FEDS. This involves weekly departmental meetings, management and strategic oversight of areas such as marketing and communications, commercial operations and IT, and much more. How will you prioritize your time and resources on operating the organization with promoting FEDS' governance and advocacy?
Can you repeat the last part of that question? Sorry.
How will you prioritize your time and resources on operating the organization with promoting Feds' governance and advocacy?
Okay, so I think that it's important to spend time with all of the departments that we organize, and I'm guessing this is in response to the part of my platform that says like an increased marketing of the governance and advocacy. So I think the operations of Feds are very, very important, but I think they rely on the fact that students need to care about them first. And so pushing for governance and advocacy, I think it's a little bit of looking at efficiencies and where we can maybe put more of our time into those things as well.
30 seconds.
So I think in order to really ensure that this organization is working as efficiently as possible, we need to be critical of the practices that we are currently already doing. So one of my platform points being an efficiency audit is to look at all those different processes and ensure that we are making them as useful and as valuable to students as possible.
There will now be 1 minute each of open debate. I'm interested. I'm interested, honestly, that Carly, that you're running for the Vice President Operations of Finance. On a personal level, and working with you, I've seen you incredibly passionate about the advocacy role. So my question to you is, what business experience do you bring to the table, and how will that benefit you in the role?
I think in terms of business experience, I am a co-op student, and I've had 4 co-op terms already, so I'm very accustomed to working with a variety of different people and diverse people. And I think when it came to thinking of positions to run for, most of my ideas revolved around the VPOF portfolio. And I think when I say like more marketing towards advocacy, I think because a lot of the times when you ask people, and even people who are involved with Feds, they say, what does Feds do for me? Students ask all the time, and they say, we run the Bomber. And I think Bomber it's one of my favorite places on campus, and it's very important, but it doesn't justify the existence of Feds. And I think the problem that we're seeing is that students don't care about Feds, and it's because we rely solely on the commercial services. So I think we need to improve the commercial services to justify that, and also focus on other areas of Feds to make sure we matter to students.
Just as a response to the fact that people only see the Bomber as what Feds does, we have well over 10,000 students involved in clubs, services, societies on campus. So I don't know that that's a valid point in terms of how people see their connection with the Federation of Students.
You have 4 seconds left. You have 10. Ben. That's it? Okay, so closing remarks, you have 30 seconds each, and then we'll take 2 questions each from the audience. Ben, you can start.
So I'll just basically reiterate my opening statement in terms of how running again, I would really like to continue the positive impact that I've been able to make within the Federation of Students. I think myself and the students I've been working with, along with the group of staff, we've really been able to get some positive momentum moving. And I would really love to keep that going and make Feds a valuable and efficient working organization that benefits students in their day-to-day lives.
Time. So we have a question from the audience that we're going to ask after.
Can I do my closing?
All right, go ahead.
So in closing, I'd just like to reiterate that I'm running because I really think that Feds needs to get back to be focused on students and to promote itself as more of a holistic organization in terms of the different portfolios. And I think that the commercial services and the IT and marketing departments are crucial to Feds and to students, and that we need to just focus on those a little bit more to make sure we're representing students as best as we can. Thank you.
So we have a Twitter question. The question is, what are your plans for implementing a bus pass option for part-time students? Carly, you can go first.
So I currently is not in my platform, but I think it's something that if students are interested in it, I'm obviously also interested in it. And I think that part-time students are a little bit neglected when we look at the services that are available to them right now. And so working with part-time students is definitely a priority for myself to make sure that they are getting the benefits that they deserve as students at the University of Waterloo.
Sorry, can you repeat the question just real quick?
What are your plans for implementing a bus pass for part-time students?
So currently, the way that the UPass works and the way that we interact with GRT is just by showing a walk card. And the universal portion of the bus pass is that they all need to be the same card. And there's no way for us to identify which students are which and who's paid and who hasn't. So by working with GRT to implement electronic fare management, which will be coming out within the next year and a half, we can look to implement that.
Do we have another audience question for each of the candidates? 1 and 2. Oh, sorry, Mike. I can't see you in the back. If you want to come up, and I'll get you the next time. Jessica and Chanakya.
So
No, I mean next position.
There's been a lot of criticism with regards to the mapped-in kiosks. So I have the same question for both of you, but it's going to be worded slightly differently. Ben, what avenues did you explore other than strictly the mapped-in kiosk to solve the problems that it solves? Carly, what would you have done differently? What other options would you have explored? And are there any routes that you would have taken other than the mapped-in kiosks?
You have 30 seconds to answer.
So two different routes that we've actually been implementing over the past number of years. So if you start to look around, you can see more of the Fed signage which has been implemented. We've also looked to have a lot more data on our website, as well as pushing out more marketing material that has where all the different services are. And we've seen a limited increase in the effectiveness, hence the reason we looked for a different option.
Time.
So I think that allowing students better access to some of the more difficult to find locations in the SLC is beneficial, but I think that could have been done with a regular paper map. I could have got printed at MediaDoc for $5. I think that student money is very valuable, and I know that the money needed to be used in the SLC, but as I look around, I can think of lots of places that could have been used. So I think that if even 10 students had been consulted, if we did a show of hands in the Great Hall, students would have been opposed.
Time. You always wrap up so nicely.
Is there open debate?
So now we're taking the second question. There's no open debate.
Hi, my name is Chanakya. The previous VPOFs had brought up Fed's logo in the SLC atrium. So what more physical Fed's marketing stuff would you like to put in next year within SLC or within UW?
Carly first.
So in my opinion, I don't think that students were very happy with the change of the logo out from the Warrior to the Feds logo. And I think that students are aware that Feds is in control of the SLC. And I think that we don't need more Feds branding necessarily within the SLC. I think that it's through Feds actions that students are going to care about Feds, not through more increased branding in the SLC.
It's a really good question, Chanakya. In terms of how Feds brands itself, both within the SLC and outside of the organization to students on campus, my brand audit is currently in the data collection phase, so we'll be having focus groups, getting feedback from students, trying to figure out what way we can connect with them best. Is it a logo on the floor? Is it something more tangible? But really, it's up to students to tell us how they want to see that communication.
Okay, so that's the end of the VP Operations and Finance debate. We're now moving on to the VP Internal debate. Thank you. Did she have the order of this? Good job. We're just waiting on Jessica for a bathroom break and a taxi for a bathroom break. Okay, so you each have 30 seconds for opening statements, and we're going to start Jessica and go down to the right, my right. Go ahead, Jessica.
So, I've mentioned my communications overhaul quite a bit. I want to outline that the reason that I want to do this is I was originally putting together a platform on other issues, and I realized that I don't have the tools without doing a communications overhaul to actually be able to do a lot of the stuff that I'd like to do.
Hi, my name is Mazi Hassan, and I'm running for VP Internal with Team Fusion. I'm running for re-election because I'm passionate about campus life and campus issues. A lot of progress has been made in the past 8 months in my current year as VP Internal, and I would really like to keep the momentum going into next year.
Hi, I'm Matt McLean, and I'm running to be your next VP Internal. I'm running to give each and every student a voice. Feds needs to be representative of every student, not just those who vote or those who I'm friends with. I want to make Feds matter by bringing students together. I will do this by identifying and reaching out to students who know more than me on a given subject, seeking out new opportunities for students to make change in the university, and ensuring that every student has the resources they need, including quick access to mental health support. I want to be your next VP Internal, but first you need to make an informed vote. Listen to the debate, challenge us, engage us.
Hello, my name is Mike Sameta. I'm running on Team Purple Crush. I've worked in the internal sort of portfolio just as a student. I was a Welcome Week coordinator. Last term, a clubs coordinator. I really enjoyed seeing the students. I was very proud of what the students can do when they come together, and I want to bring them together. Vote Purple Crush. Thank you.
All right, so the first question is for Jessica. Many of your platform points and comments surround allowing student groups within the organization to direct themselves. There are 8 services, 8 societies, over 200 clubs, and countless volunteers. When a student group has an idea, initiative, task that goes against the mission, policies, and principles of FEDS or the university, how will you work with the group to align them back with the organization's goals? Be specific.
This is actually a really difficult question to answer. I do want to give more power to the organizations, to the students, but as you've outlined, there is the possibility for something to go against what it is that FED stands for. And in those circumstances, ideally I would work with the organization to develop a better understanding of what it is they're trying to address, so that assuming there is some sort of legitimate reason they're looking to address it, that can be addressed, but anything that is antisocial in nature or goes against what it is that we need to be doing for students can be appropriately shut down.
Moz, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah, I agree with Jessica there. Independent, we need to not be managing club services and societies. Obviously, we have to empower them. We have to make sure that we are giving them the proper freedom and independence. Empower them with the proper resources. If at any point they want to do something that doesn't fit with the rules, try to work out what they're trying to do and how we can amend it so that it fits with the rules. If there's a lot of passion, maybe look at what the rules are and if they need to be reviewed.
Matt, 30 seconds.
Thank you. So we need to start off with giving the groups as much freedom as is possible. So I think there's 2 questions here, one about breaking rules and one about alignment with general FED's organizational principles. I think societies need to be able to advocate for themselves. Students need to be able to advocate for themselves. Then FEDS needs to jump in and provide support to give them the organizational support. On the rules side, it starts with having an honest discussion with them, explaining the rules and why that we have implemented these rules, which are quite expansive.
Mike?
There we go. The classic quote goes, rules are made to be broken. FEDS doesn't necessarily have rules. We have values. We need to stick to those values. Saying that, though, we do need to collaborate in a fair and honest manner with these student groups that might want to go against some of our values to make sure they understand why we have them in place. Thank you.
You now have 1 minute each for open debate.
Yeah, I think as everyone here has said, it really comes down to providing student groups that freedom. And in my time, we had a lot of clubs that wanted to do something that didn't necessarily meet the rules or wanted to do things differently. Clubs like SFPR or clubs like the Students for Life Club. And so I think the key was to sit down with them and explain to them why some of these rules are in place and how we can support them in what they want to achieve, rather than us acting like the big boss and saying, oh, no, you can't do it at all.
I would definitely agree with Moz. I think me and him have the same sort of view on this, as I did work under him with the club support team. There were some clubs that came through that had certain flares to them that didn't necessarily make sense in a student organization.
Okay, so I think Mike touched on something interesting earlier where he said that if a group doesn't agree with FED's values, we should be stepping in. I think we need to provide groups opportunity to challenge us and really allow students to set what our values are. And we want to give them the voice through the advocacy support team so they can not only push the university, but they can work with counselors to push FEDS and reform our values to really reflect the needs of students today.
So I mentioned that I would not be afraid to shut down an issue that goes against FED's policy that's antisocial in nature. I do also want to add to this that it's important that we take these organizations that might have different goals than us that might challenge our notions of what is correct seriously, because it might actually be the case that our values are the ones that are incorrect. It's, as everyone else has said, it's about working with them to understand the roots behind things, and I think we are all in agreement on this.
I agree with Jessica. There's one thing that I see in the Fed's office every day when I go to work, and it is we promote tolerance of student diversity. That tolerance has actually been taken out of that document of mission statement, because tolerance is not what we should be promoting. We should be promoting acceptance. So values do change. So we should work with these students to not manage them, manhandle them, but we should work with them to make sure their voices are heard. Thank you.
Can we know how much time we have?
You each have around 30 seconds. You're good? Okay, next question.
Sorry, just to remind the candidates to hold the microphone nice and close when you're speaking so our listeners at home can hear what you're saying. So this question is for Moz. Based on the 2014-2015 budget on the Fed's website, your portfolio takes up 13% of the entire Fed's expenses. In addition to that, you use a percentage of the other support area budgets. Your platform promises items such as a new bursary fund, cheaper venue space, a new service, and a new staff position. How will you justify and remain transparent to students on the increased funding that will be necessary to accomplish these tasks? You have 1 minute.
Good question, Natasha. So there's a lot of things that I have in my platform, but they don't necessarily cost a whole lot of money. For example, I don't have a staff increase. The sponsorship coordinator that I think you're referring to would be a volunteer position. Space venues, I would be advocating to the university to make sure that Fed Hall remains accessible and affordable to students. We're not paying for it. And also, in addition to that, we are currently negotiating good rates with current banquet halls so that they can offer better rates to students. And the new service, the Bike Center, it is currently being operated as a commercial service. I just want to operate it as a student-run service. The only difference would be that it would be student leaders taking charge of it rather than a full-time staff who volunteers to run it.
Matt, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, so Moz mentioned some of his lower cost solutions, but I think there are other things within the Fusion platform that will cost more money. We're talking about the post office, the prep kitchen, the new commercial services. I am extremely worried about increasing the Fed's fee. I think we need to work on keeping fees manageable for students. That's not only co-op, university, but also Fed's fees. We need to really make those work for students now.
Mike, go ahead.
I've looked a bit at Moz's platform in terms of the services that he plans to offer. Of course, that's going to bring more coordinators on. I'm not having a problem with that. I know that involvement is something that we all want. What I want to do with the services is something that's going to not necessarily cost much more money, just reform them so they have support for students. Support them with different issues that they have. Thank you.
Jessica, you have 30 seconds.
I don't actually have much to say on this issue. I'll decline my 30 seconds.
You now have 4 minutes of open debate, 1 minute each. Go ahead.
So yeah, I'll sort of respond to Matt, even though a lot of it isn't part of my portfolio's platform. Ben could speak a lot more to the Canada Post, but the plan with that is to have it cost neutral and so that it recovers the initial investment we put down within 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, Ben. And I think it's all about providing value to students with what services we're offering. If we can offer a service that provides a lot more benefit to students than what it costs, then I think that's something we should definitely look to do.
Okay, so could you please explain how the Bike Center will be offering better service when we bring it to students?
Yes, so currently the Bike Center is run by a full-time staff member who volunteers their time. It has incredibly unreliable timings. It is open at times when students cannot access it. When it is run by a student-run service, it is more structured and we can offer fixed office hours so that students can better access and have more reliable access to the Bike Center.
Okay, so you're talking about the top organizational level change of staff member to students, but the core issue is how do you get students engaged in volunteering? I think right now they're operating on a fairly good principle where you come in, you pay for the service, and I've used the bike center. I'm a frequent cyclist. I value like the dollar or two that I pay for those services, and I can get access to those services. So I do challenge the full accessibility of the bike center. And when we talk about the bike rental program, we will be buying bikes. That is another cost that we are going to have to incur. And is this idea that has the general student support yet? I've just heard about it this term. So where do we get the student support?
How much time do I have?
You have 10 seconds.
The bike rental program is an idea of the Sustainable Campus Initiative, and I would like to empower them to succeed. It is not my idea. It is not like something that I'm pursuing on my own.
I would like to continue answering Matt's question then. Thanks for turning them back to me sometimes. I talked to Brendan at length about changes to the Bike Center and how it could help students. It would be open a month earlier into the term, so that bike auction that happens twice a year would happen earlier, and you can get more students who actually could bike through September and October. Also, he said that bringing students into running a service is going to get their friends more involved as well. If you bring more students in to be coordinators and volunteers, you're going to get more people. The return is going to be twofold. Continuing on that point, I would definitely say that opening the bike center to students might expand it into the winter. People still bike in the winter. We're crazy enough to be Canadians. So I think that's something that's needed. Thank you.
So with this bike rental idea, I like this. If we made it so that it was rental on a termly basis, we could run it as a cost-neutral service that would allow for the maintenance of the bikes and would reduce the number of bikes that are abandoned on campus by students who move away.
Matt, you have 8 seconds. Mike, 6. Jessica, 42. Maz, 0.
I just want to reiterate my point that students can get engaged with a service, either staff run or student run.
The internal portfolio is important for engaging students. Thank you.
On the issue of costs in general, I am generally fiscally conservative. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't want to spend on things that need to be spent on. It means that I would rather save where we can and run it so that we're not running too much of a loss. Ideally, as was mentioned earlier, cost-neutral services or things that will make back their initial expense are things I'd like to look into first.
All right, the next question is for Matt. Our student union runs democratically and relies on its governance structure to accomplish tasks. The Campus Life Department has many committee structures and processes to take in student opinion to make it as efficient as possible, as this department is the most diverse and continually active of the organization. By bringing the decision-making power away from a student-run committee, how will you ensure efficiency and fairness in student funding allocation?
Okay, so you're talking about my plan to create a pitch competition for extra funding for clubs, services, societies, and any student who's interested in it. So the key thing there is to bring it to students. This is an idea to increase engagement. How we're going to ensure that it is fair is the internal administration committee will manage how it is run. So we can create structures to make it more fair so that not only the biggest clubs get the money or the biggest groups, we also have awards for small groups. So a club can apply to get $100 and they won't be competing against the guys who need $1,000. I think you need to create the structure, and that's where the leadership comes in, and that's how you ensure that this competition is fair while increasing the amount of student engagement.
Mike, you have 30 seconds.
I don't think a pitch competition is the answer. There are a lot of students who don't have an entrepreneurial spirit, even though this school sort of trumpets it. I don't believe that everyone needs to, or else we have a lot of entrepreneurs and nobody else to buy their stuff. What I believe would work better is clubs collaboration, and just collaboration in general within feds. There's many budgets that do not get used. So if you can have clubs working together to sort of split costs,
Time.
Thank you.
Jessica?
I think a better response to this would be to make it so that the clubs do have a slightly larger termly budget. But I've also mentioned elsewhere the idea of a Fed's library. This library would be an independent service with its own budget strictly for the acquisition of new media for club services and any other group that would have things stored in there that could be used.
Miles?
So as I've expressed before, I have a lot of concerns regarding how a pitch competition would work and how it would ensure fairness for the clubs that are smaller, that are newer, that don't have a lot of members, as opposed to clubs that are bigger and have a lot more members and be able to mobilize a lot more effectively. Would that not disadvantage smaller clubs? Every big club was a small club at one point. They need to grow, and this doesn't seem to be allowing for that.
You will now have 1 minute each for open debate.
Okay, so in Maz's platform, he wants to give money to new clubs. Right now, every club gets $75. So this is a funding scheme that benefits the smaller clubs. $75 is much more beneficial for a club with 7 members than a club with a few hundred. So this does shift the balance more towards a per member basis because people can mobilize. But I think the real advantage of this is to get clubs from the big ones, they will be also voting on the smaller proposals. So they will understand and see what other clubs are doing and bring the collaboration like Mike said.
Matt, you mentioned that you want to deregulate the Special Projects Fund and the EOI Fund, correct?
Yes, to a degree.
So the Enterprise Opportunity Innovation Fund is not a Feds fund. It is a university endowment fund that has, in addition to Feds policies and how to administer it, a lot of university policies and how to administer it. How would you ensure that through a pitch competition we're doing the due diligence of how that money is being allocated?
Okay, so this is a fund that has a huge amount of confusion and hardly anyone knows about it. So the first step is really understanding what are the conditions. How much is it? I don't hear that value out there. People don't know how much they're applying to when they go to clubs. So that's the starting point.
How will either of you stop something like UW Lift Up from happening again? So like a club that comes in wanting a lot of money from Feds to support their student endeavor and ends up sort of being a failure.
I think it starts with the engagement. Lift Up had a lot of supporters, so we should be funding that. And then the accountability comes after and additional.
Time.
How much time do I have?
You have 38 seconds, Maz.
So right now, I think my plan is to make that committee structure a lot more transparent to the clubs that apply to it by allowing clubs to come in person and apply and providing them better updates, having more students. Counselors are students too. One of the concerns I have is that we're moving away from the committee structure, which includes members of council, while Team Goals platform says giving more power to council. So when it comes to club funding, we are talking about completely removing counselors from having that input.
So, well, we currently lack the resources for bottom-up approaches and so on. A balanced approach in general is the best. And currently, I would say that rather than opening this up for more bottom-up management or competition or anything like that, keeping it committee-based where the committee is educated on making the right decisions as to whether or not someone is able to receive funding for their project is the right approach to this particular issue.
I definitely agree with Jessica and Maz on this. Keeping it committee-based is a good plan, but one thing that we need to stress is the communication out of those committees. I want students to know where their money is going, all the good causes that their money is going to, and that's...
Okay, next question.
So this question's for Mike. Traditionally, the President and VP Education take the lead in university relations and institutional advocacy. However, services within the VP internal portfolio, including GLOW and Sustainable Campus Initiative, have a mandate to advocate their issues to the university administration. What do you see as the VP internal's role in university relations, and how would you work to facilitate the efforts of these services? You have 1 minute.
In terms of university advocacy, engaging the students is definitely important to the internal portfolio. One thing that I proposed is the Services Support Network. So there's already GLOW in the Women's Center, I thought about something, a service for mental health. Then I looked back and said, mental health is something that affects all students, and FED's purpose is to serve students. So why not spread this over already existing services? This is something that I definitely believe is needed at our school. We need to stop making mental health just a special project and more something that we work on full time. Thank you.
Jessica, you have 30 seconds.
So I think this is one of the areas where a communications overhaul is necessary so that we can get feedback in closer to real time from student services societies on areas of need with regards to mental health. I have personally dealt with depression, and there really isn't a whole lot available at the time that I was dealing with it in terms of directing you.
I would say in addition to Glow and Women's Center, I think all services deal with an issue that can be advocated to the university upon. And I think that's been a priority for me this year, to help them advocate for that, to empower them. We changed the Campus Life Advisory Committee structure so that those service coordinators have a seat there and they can voice their issues, so that council is then able to take that issue to their respective university decision makers.
Okay, so when we talk advocacy, you mentioned President and VP Education. I think the huge part that we've been missing lately is what is the VP Internal doing in the advocacy front? They are responsible for advocating for campus life. I think we've seen a lot of relationships being built up through Dave McDougall and his work as the campus life manager. So we really need to support that and get more student feedback through council to the campus life advocacy work.
You now have 1 minute each of open debate.
So, speaking with Glow recently, or rather being in their center for a discussion, there was a bit of a weakness that currently exists that was identified, where we offer peer support, but there's been increasing interest in group peer support, which currently we do not have the ability to administer. I'd like to see this be something that's picked up, some form of training identified that can allow for this, so that we can make this a reality.
So I'm going to add on to Jessica's point there. I think if this is something that Glow is interested in, this is something we need to enable them to do. So the advocacy support team will help with that. But on top of that, I think a general shift we need to make is, instead of looking for feds to provide additional service and funding for the services, we need to reach out to the university. And that's where there's a huge opportunity to really promote our advocacy work in getting more services provided by the university that are related to our services. We provide the gap if the university cannot do it.
I'm an advocate for collaboration, and there's one thing that I see every day. It's sort of where education can help us out. I definitely believe that OCC is a great service for not just first years, but upper years who need somewhere to go just to hang out with friends or need someone to talk to. Beiju is an OCC Dawn, and one thing that they can definitely, one thing that'll help them is more training for peer counseling. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely agree. In terms of advocacy, we have to focus on empowering what the services are doing. In terms of what has been happening, gender-neutral washrooms, empowering Glow to be able to do that, multi-phase spaces on campus, sustainable campus initiative, all these are things that are currently happening. Now, in terms of when we talk about the advocacy support team, I want to question Matt about how, like, when we talk about empowering students to be able to reach decision makers, isn't that the job of council? Aren't those the people that are supposed to be empowering students to do that? And how would one additional layer of bureaucracy help solve that?
Absolutely, great question. So I think the biggest difference between advocacy support team and council is that counselors represent students. I don't think everything we're pushing the university needs to be representative. I think if a student has an issue, they should feel empowered to work on it. If they need support of a general group of students, then they go to council, then we can create more change.
I don't think council is the best channel for advocacy. There's definitely some groups that might go to counselors, and counselors don't really care enough about their issue. something like AFSA there was definitely an issue in the beginning getting traction because ASU president didn't really have anything to do with it. And a lot of arts counselors didn't want anything to do with it. So that's why something beyond council would be good.
So with Mike's notion about how counselors don't, in quotes, don't care about the issues, that is exactly the problem. They need to care about the issues. They need to be engaging with students and services about the issues, and they need to be advocating to the university administration about the issues, and we need to empower them to be able to do that.
Currently, there is room for exploration of the idea of club service collaboration, and I think a good start to this would be during the once a term, beginning of term presidential training for clubs. We go into that and explain what all of the services are and how these clubs can interact with the services to better provide a club service to their members.
Okay, so I just want to add, special projects should not be implemented by each exec. We need to get students in the room so they can continue beyond exec transition.
Mike, you have 5 seconds, Moz 6 seconds, Jessica 3. We're good?
All right, this next question is for Jessica. The Fed's Marketing and Communications Department has 1 director, 3 coordinators, upwards of 15 part-time students, and 2 co-op student staff covering graphic design, video coverage, website content, promotions, and student engagement. In your platform, you mentioned a communications overhaul. How do you see this currently at capacity, Marketing and Communications Department, working with your overhaul?
Wow, that's a difficult question to answer. So, I would have to work intimately with the marketing department throughout the entirety of the overhaul, which I anticipate taking around 4 months. During that, I would like to not bog down the marketing department too much, but as far as involvement of the marketing department, my primary thing that I want to do with them is get them trained on issues of color blindness and accessibility. I've spoken with the accessibility office. It would be very easy for them to do a small seminar on how to do graphics design for individuals with color blindness, which currently represents somewhere between 3 and 10% of the greater population.
Pause, you have 30 seconds.
Are you okay, Devin? Communications overhaul isn't exactly part of my platform. It is part of Paula's platform, and a central part of that being a new website. And I think where it ties into my platform is allowing student groups like services and societies ability to change their portion of their website. Right now, services have to wait 3-4 days, submit a request, takes forever to change anything. So I think that's where I can help.
Okay, so on prioritization within the marketing department, Carly wants to shift that away from the commercial services and the events more towards the advocacy work that we do. But in terms of what I want to do in my platform in regards to communication, is really foster that two-way communication. I want to implement a software tool that will ensure that every conversation we have with students is recorded so we can follow up after exec transition and so we can collect aggregate data better.
Mike.
Okay, number 1, I want to reform the club's database. It's very ugly right now. I also want support from the university. I think they can help us out because there's aspects that aren't just feds. There's academic clubs, there's feds clubs, and there's athletics clubs. And the university should be proud of these, not just us. Number 2, exec blogs. I saw a post the other day that there's more Fusion blog posts than from the exec all year. Thank you.
Each candidate will have 1 minute for open debate.
I'll respond to the blog to the blog comment. Yeah, we're writing more blogs because right now we're not allowed to work, and during our term as execs, personally I think blogs are not that engaging with students, and like when we have the ability to do so, why not go out there, talk to students in person, and engage with them while we're execs. In the 2-week periods of platforms, we have to get a lot of ideas across, and writing blogs is one of those ways. So we have been doing that a lot more.
So, do you not have to get a lot of ideas across as an exec?
Of course we do.
I think what's really important is the fact that, like, We need to have constant two-way communication. We're living in an online world, so we really need to get that through the website, through our social media, and through email posts, and reaching out to students to not only tell them what we're doing, but to ask them what they think.
So I mentioned that I don't want to bog down marketing too much. My newsletter that I want to do is one area where it could potentially bog down marketing during the communications overhaul process. How I plan to prevent this from occurring is to do the newsletter through the Office of the VP Internal for the first 6 months and then hand it over to marketing as part of a transition in the overhaul.
I'd just like to say what Maz said doesn't make any sense, because if you're campaigning, you want the highest reach possible, so obviously more blog posts during a campaign would make sense. I definitely agree that you want to see students in your job, but getting the word out to what you're doing to students is very important to feds.
How much more time do I have, Danielle?
You have 29 seconds.
Okay. With regards to Matt's point about two-way communications, absolutely agree. We want to engage in two-way communications. That is the best kind of communication. That's why we have two ideas that are currently in the works that I've talked to council about. One of them is Feds Talks, where we'll go to this will happen in the next few months, this year. We'll go to every single faculty, talk to students, and we're also doing a rant competition where students can rant about Feds.
Okay, so when we're talking two-way communications, how does that work with Imprint? I think there needs to be two-way communications there, so Imprint can hold Feds Exec accountable, and not everything is released through crafted statements. We need to have ourselves accessible to every single student.
How much time do I have?
You have 43 seconds, Mike.
So much time. One thing that me and Beju have talked about as exec are that we are going to visit all the societies, especially the satellite campuses. We're going to try to visit every 2 weeks. So two days of the term, we'll be visiting satellite campuses. We will see students. We're not going to be sitting in our offices all day at office hours trying to see one student at a time. We want to get the word out. That definitely lends itself also to bi-weekly exec reports. I worked at BlackBerry for a term, and there were weekly reports. So I think we need at least that professionalism. Thank you.
So one thing that's on my updated platform is that I would like to hold a twice-a-term meeting between the Office of the VP Internal and the executives of all clubs who are willing to come out to such a meeting to discuss issues currently facing clubs and how we can address these issues before they hit a critical point where they absolutely need to be addressed then.
Do I have left, Jane?
You have 23 seconds, Matt.
Okay, so that's something I've already done on the club support team this term. I met with the charitable clubs to see what they needed, and now I'm creating a plan to better communicate how we sell tickets on campus and collect all the funding sources available so these clubs can find funding easier on campus.
So, as a member of the exec team for the Anime Club, we haven't exactly heard of anything on that end of things about termly meetings or twice-a-term meetings. So is it just the charitable clubs that have been...
I'm sharing with the rest of the team today.
One thing I want to work towards is getting more clubs locker space. I would work with any VPOF to get this done.
You guys good? Move on to the next question. You have all under 10 seconds.
Gold.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, so this next question is for Maz. Your current executive action plan stated that you would create a positive working relationship between Feds, the faculty-student societies, and the societies on satellite campuses, and you committed to at least one collaborative event with each of the 9 societies in the fall and winter terms. This is a direct match to the point on your current platform to meet unresolved needs of societies and satellite campuses. What have you accomplished for this overlapping goal, and how would this next year be different if you were re-elected? You have 1 minute.
Good question. So satellite campus relations and society relations have been a priority for me and will continue to be a priority for me. In terms of what has been done, we have met with all the societies and we've talked about the issues that each of them faces individually. We've told them how Feds is valuable to them and how we can help, how we can support them better, not how we can be their bosses. We have built that positive working relationship between all the societies, and now all the satellite campuses also know what Feds does for them, which Wasn't necessarily the case before. I've visited all satellite campuses, and we have done events with all satellite campuses. We've also done collaborative events with all the societies. And I would like to continue building on that relationship. One thing I want to do now is have that inter-society dialogue that was lacking so far in this year because societies didn't see the value of Feds in facilitating that discussion. So I'd like to do that now.
All right, so I'm going to tack on to that last point. I think Feds needs to be a facilitator for societies. There's the assumption that Feds is an overlord. They're better than societies. I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot that societies can learn from each other, and there's a lot that we can learn from societies. So we need to facilitate open discussion with societies. On the collaborative event side, that is something that I would like to continue with, but my main focus will be the facilitator and really allowing societies to learn from each other and grow together.
Part of my collaborative platform is to try to get Feds and the societies to work together, more like the FENSOC event that was held in the summer. I didn't see one in the fall. It'd be awesome to have one, like, try to facilitate one per term, and I think that would be a great step forward. Thank you.
So, the way I see the societies, they're essentially miniature Feds. If we look at global governance, it's as if Feds is a higher power and the societies are a middle power. But that's currently the relationship. I'd like to treat them as equals and bring them in and collaborate with them on the level of equals.
You now have a minute each of open debate.
So yeah, I think as we're all in agreement here that we need to facilitate better society discussions. We need to be there as a facilitator, not as an overlord. And I think that was the issue in the past, where Feds acted like they were the bosses of societies, and that really turned them off. And I think we've been able to build a lot of positive relations this year. In the spring term, when we did the Feds and NSTOC event, a lot of engineers were like, wow, we thought Feds and engineering hated each other. So I think we're building on that really productively, and I want to continue that.
Okay, so the FENSOC day that was held with engineering was interesting because it was mentioned that it would be held with all the other faculties. I haven't seen a similar event on other faculties. What happened?
So welcome week, we had World of You Waterloo Day, which was a collaboration with all societies.
But not individual Feds and society, one society at a time.
FEDSOC events.
Exactly.
Coining terms. Yes, I want to make sure that everyone knows Feds is nice. I want to promote that, like, thank you culture. I want to make sure that we respect what they do for their own students and support them. Thank you.
How much time?
You have 20 seconds left.
I also don't want to make sure that we're not forgetting our satellite campuses. They've had a lot of issues too. I've been working with architecture on fixing their healthcare, their Feds bus system, with pharmacy on the dispensary, with their orientation week, with Stratford on the shuttle bus. So there's a lot of issues with satellite campuses that I also want to continue working on.
I just have a question. Wait, does Miles have any more time?
You have 46 seconds.
Okay, cool. I talked to one of my friends who started at pharmacy last January. The second I talked to her, she said there are some issues with the dispensary. I would think that moving forward with such an easy fix, such as just bringing more products from international news, could have been implemented a lot faster.
Maz, you have 2 seconds.
It's happening right now.
All right, so I'm going to jump in on the satellite campuses. That's the one. So I think we really need to look at the community that these campuses have. Architecture has an amazing community down in Cambridge. So I want to create more off-campus clubs and encourage creation. Right now we have 2 right now, one in Stratford, one in Cambridge. So we can also look at connecting co-op students with students who are attending in these cities. I've talked to architecture students. This is something that they would be interested in like meeting new Waterloo students who are working in Cambridge. Stratford, that can happen too. So we need to look at bringing together students everywhere, not only just on campus, but in Toronto, Ottawa, every co-op city, and every satellite campus.
I mentioned the idea of treating the societies as equals to feds. Part of this is, I don't really like the word committee here because it's a big, scary word that might not be the most appropriate for what I want to do. But I want to form a committee of representatives from all of the societies and a representative of feds, where the entire goal of this committee is to look at ways that we can bridge the gap between feds and societies through either events, better communications, or, well, just engaging them more.
I think that committee exists. Matt, it's the Committee of Presidents. Working with them, I think, would definitely be important. Working with them a lot more to make sure that they're respected. Thank you.
Jessica, you have 22 seconds. Matt, you have 4. Mike, you have 17.
We need to meet more with the Committee of Presidents.
I think we are all in agreement that a lot needs to be done to bring societies to really feel as equals to feds, rather than just something that exists in accessory to feds.
I think I would definitely agree with everybody up here. In terms of student space, I think we need to promote it more in the society areas. I know that the SLC is not the only place students come together. It's everywhere on campus. Thank you.
All right, this next question is for Matt. FEDS has termly to yearly opportunities available to students for a vast array of volunteer experiences. However, FEDS still has trouble filling seats of committees, getting survey respondents, and collecting student consultation. All of this comes down to lack of engagement within the student population. How will you work against this issue to reach out to thought leaders, to the leaders? Provide ways of engagement.
Okay, so it starts off with engaging the people who want to be engaged. A lot of the time, somebody comes with an issue, we try and work on it, and maybe we don't make any progress, and then it gets dropped. This is probably one of the biggest issues with feds, is that exec take on issues, and then they lose them in transition, or they lose them throughout the year. I want to keep power within students, so we will continue to enable them to continue to push for it. If it's a 4-year project, they need to work. They can work on it for 4 years, and it doesn't get lost in the transition. So part of that is also listening to their voice. So when they say something, we need to reassure them that their voice is being heard. Through my software management tool, that will we will say that every single voice is recorded. We can access it, and they will be more encouraged to raise their voice and hopefully participate in these committees that you did mention.
Mike?
I would definitely agree with Matt on that. Better transitioning needs to happen. I know Danielle's the only exec who wanted to transition this year. In terms of that, keeping software consistent is important. I know on the club support team, me and Matt hated the Zimbra email client that we have to use. Making volunteers' jobs easier and making them more doable is going to get more people to want to be involved.
Jessica?
So my first line of approach to greater engagement of the students is the newsletter portion of my communications overhaul. But this is just the first line. There needs to be everything else in the communications behind that so that the newsletter can actually get vital information that students can use to access everything else about FEDS.
So there's a lot of student groups and student leaders that regularly engage with students. People like the service coordinators, like the society presidents, and I think we need to bring them closer to the governance side of FEDS, like the counselors, so that we as FEDS are being effective. We are doing, we're actioning on what the engagement and what the student feedback is. So I think that's one way to go about.
Each candidate will now have 1 minute for open debate.
Yeah, we absolutely need to bring it closer to the governance side. But how do we do that? We do that by making sure that these conversations are recorded and setting up processes. So with the advocacy support team, #1 priority is ensuring that we have great data management tools on that team, so that whenever a student talks to them, if they defer them to societies, to counselors, We have that recorded. We know that this student brought up this issue, and we can re-engage with them.
I remember earlier this term, Deanna was trying to put together an Inclusion Day conference trip to Toronto, York University. And I think an important lesson in this is that we need to understand how to use our channels. This is something that I, as VP Internal, would have tried to push to as many people as I could. It's definitely an important thing that students get involved in. Using your channels to get people involved is the most important thing.
So I just want to go back to Matt's idea about interacting with thought leaders and empowering them. Matt, you mentioned that you want to connect with thought leaders on campus who are invested in particular area of FEDS. I would consider service coordinators to be thought leaders because they're invested in a particular area of FEDS. And so have you had a chance to talk to service coordinators, particularly with Co-op Connection, whom you want to be part of the off-campus club creation? It will be a huge undertaking. And have you had a chance to talk with the Co-op Connection coordinators to talk about how that can happen?
Not particularly. Thought leaders are not only the people in formal positions. Service coordinators are great people, but there are other great people on campus who may not be involved in a FEDS club or a FEDS service or orientation week. We need to look at these other leaders and reach out to them to ensure that we are gathering as much information as possible. I'm not an expert in everything that I'm going to be doing. I need to learn from people, and we need to reach out to them so I can learn, and we can all learn together.
I definitely agree with Matt on this. Those who are involved are not the only people that we want involved. We want everybody involved. And I think that getting the right people, even if they aren't the people who already have a job, getting their ideas is important because the people who are in the job might be stuck on a one-track idea train.
Maz, you have 27 seconds.
So, with this whole communications overhaul, there's a lot that I haven't seen in terms of the communications channels that currently exist. There's a lot that I need to look into, and that's the first step. I mentioned that I want student feedback and a bottom-up approach. That begins now. So when I start a communications overhaul, any feedback that I can get during the beginning stages of this makes a huge impact in how that gets done and how I can address your needs through new communications channels that better serve you.
I think in an ideal world, we should definitely be listening to everyone, whether involved with FEDS or not involved with FEDS. But I think listening to those people, I'm referring to the services once again, those coordinators, for example, the Sustainable Campus Initiative coordinator who regularly interacts with 200 to 300 people, volunteers who are committed to sustainability. Interacting with them first is, I think, the first step that we should be taking.
I think the services working together with like-minded clubs is something that's definitely important. Thank you.
So maybe it should be the first step, but it should definitely not be the only step. Sustainability is not limited to Sci on campus.
Time.
Agreed. So for my communications overhaul, I've mentioned the newsletter will be the first thing. Following the newsletter, the next thing I want to do is implement systems that allow me to get feedback so that the rest of it can be done smoothly to meet your needs.
Okay, next question.
So this question's for Mike. You haven't stated any specific promises or initiatives in your platform during this election. How will you create a FEDS that is fair, collaborative, fiscally responsible, and purposeful while still keeping in mind the unique student profile of a U-Waterloo student? You have 1 minute.
Just to clarify, Mike, that was last Monday when I hadn't seen your platform.
Okay. I'm sorry for the late platform. Our website took a while to develop. I enjoyed putting it together. I think the whole services support network is influential in getting people involved in strongly built and sustained groups on campus that all have their own unique flair of how they bring students together. As long as the club's collaboration that I want to see, I want people to work together. There was one event last term where there was the Midnight Sun engineering club putting together a LOL tournament for sponsorship. And there was the LOL club that was running a LOL tournament the next week. So I think bringing these groups together to do the same thing is something we need to do. Thank you.
Jessica, you have 30 seconds.
Could you repeat the question?
The question was, you haven't stated any specific promises or initiative in your platform during this election. How will you create a Feds that is fair, collaborative, fiscally responsible, and purposeful while still keeping in mind the unique student profile of a U-Waterloo student?
I hate to keep plugging the communications overhaul, but that really is the first step. Something I would like to see is, Mike has mentioned clubs collaboration. I'd like to see this, but I know that a lot of clubs don't necessarily see eye to eye on issues. Feds would need to act as a mediator in this to help events actually occur where similar events are possible.
I guess this question isn't entirely relevant to others other than Mike, but I'll speak about like what my platform talks about, and it has very tangible points about how I will empower student groups, about how I'll raise the profile of student groups within the Waterloo community, and how I will facilitate collaboration between student groups.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question to answer because it's super specific. I think I'm going to track onto the collaborative part of that and look at what we're doing as Feds. Especially in the Campus Life Department, we are here to bring students together. So that was what my primary goal is. I want to bring students together in every single aspect of my job. And that starts with bringing societies together with the Committee of Presidents meeting, holding it much more regularly than the one time in the past year.
You now each have 1 minute of open debate. Have at her.
I guess I'll start then. So my idea of a Feds library is a service that would ultimately touch every individual on campus, well, undergrads at the very least, in that it could encourage collaboration through being something that is usable by all clubs, all services, all societies, all students. And I think that's a good start in the right direction for collaboration.
So I'd just like to clarify, Jessica, is the Feds library going to be different than what has already been working on?
It takes what you're currently working on for the club's library about 3 steps further, involves the services in this, consolidates club storage space that is not strictly for high value goods, and does a few other things. If you'd like to talk more about this in person, I'd be happy to, but currently there's not enough time to address it here.
So the concern I have is that students at a general meeting, which is the highest form of governance decision making at Feds, already voted for a specific room to be assigned for a very specific purpose. That cannot be changed. So I don't know how we can change the scope of what we're currently working on with the club's library and the resource center.
All right, let's keep on talking about the club's library.
Actually, can I address this first?
Yep.
So I actually spoke with Dave McDougall the other day about this, and he led me to believe that it would be possible to change routes.
Sorry, Jessica.
Okay. Oh, hello. Okay. So I want to ask Moz, how do you plan on operating the club's library? My understanding is that it's a club support team that will be operating it, but currently we only have about 5 hours of office hours a week. So will the club's library only be open 10 to 3?
No, so the library portion of it will be operated by the club support team, and that will be closed off, and so that's where we're getting engaged. And the other part of it will be open to students 24/7. It'll be open for club bookings all the time.
All right, so half the room is open for 5 hours a day. We want, through the advocacy support team, we want to have another 5 volunteers who will be able to extend the hours for the club's library and be able to manage it and provide that advocacy support to increase it to 10 hours a day at least. So we can give the full access to the club's library that students voted for at the GM.
If students need more time for the library to be open, I don't see why we cannot get more volunteers to be able to do that.
Okay. One of the plans in my platform was expanding the club support team so that more club collaborations happen. I remember being asked by Jimmy about a certain club that I was a president of and confusion within that club. I think getting more club support team members might be a good plan for the two-way communication. Not just clubs asking feds what they do, but feds asking clubs how they can help.
Okay, so with the club support team, we also need to make sure that the people on that team are engaged. We want to include the volunteer center with the club support team, so these people who know the clubs can help students find the clubs that will be the best fit for them.
You have 30 seconds, Mike.
Oh, so much time. Okay. So going back to the pillars that you addressed, Fed said is fair, collaborative, fiscally responsible, and purposeful. The one that we haven't touched on is fair. One way I think we should do this is to get a way to stop giving the same positions to the same people. Let people move up. Let people move up through feds and develop their own skills. Thank you. Let others in.
Maz, you have 14 seconds.
Matt told me that I should say vote Fusion, so vote Fusion.
Okay, so you each have 30 seconds for closing remarks, and then we're going to take 2 questions each from the audience. And we'll start with Jessica and go to the right again.
So I'm going to focus my closing remarks on the Fed's library. Currently, speaking for the Anime Club, we will not likely move our media into the library given how it will be operated, as this would not allow us free access to our media at awkward times such as past midnight when we might have to return DVDs so that we aren't leaving them someplace where storage is suboptimal.
So being involved in club services in different parts of campus life has really defined my undergraduate experience here at U Waterloo. I've been around for a while now, and hopefully I'll be around for one more year. I've seen student issues firsthand. Being in this position for the past 8 months has allowed me to work with those issues, and I would really like to continue doing that, and that's why I really hope you re-elect me as your VP Internal and you vote for Team Fusion in this election.
So we've heard the issues, we've heard the solutions, and we've heard from exec and students. Now it's time to hear from you. Voting is the easiest way to have your voice heard, so from February 10th to 12th, please vote. I and Team Gold humbly ask for your support. I truly and honestly believe that Feds can do more for each and every single student. If elected, I promise to continually learn from and engage students throughout my time in office. I promise to respect each and every student, and I promise to make Feds matter. Thank you.
So I've had different flavors of being involved throughout my university career. I started at St. Jerome's where I was an orientation leader in second year. Then I moved into being a Don. Then I went on a few co-op terms. And I sort of cut off my involvement to focus on like co-op and my grades a bit. I came back a few years ago saying, I want to do something different. And I want to do something different for students, get them more involved. There are 24,000 people who applied to be in clubs last year. And I should be proud of this.
Time. Okay, audience questions. I'm going to keep it to 2 per candidate, so I'm going to keep that as strict as I can. I have one here.
Hi guys, my name is Brooke, so this is for every candidate. So if you were voted in but not with your team, how would you work together to collaborate with each other to make Feds better for students?
I've been on so many different teams of people throughout my university career. I work well with anybody. I'm not saying that just because it sounds nice. I've worked with type A personalities, and it's a different flair of understanding how you can interact with people. And I think that's something that I will bring to the table and do a great job at. Thank you.
All right. Hello, there we go. So if I'm elected without my entire team, I'll work with them, of course. And how I plan to do that is through an open mind. One of my favorite things about Team Gold is that we will debate things. We are not afraid to challenge each other. And that would also be the case with any other exec team. I think we will have fundamental differences, and I will approach that with an open mind, and I hope that my opponents will be able to do that if elected to office with me.
So I would say that anyone who knows me really well would say that I'm easy to work with, or I would hope they would say that. And I would be more than happy to work with a different team, although I would hope they get elected, my team gets elected. And yeah, like having an open mind, challenging others' opinions, expecting them to do so for me. I'm playing devil's advocate. Stefan and I always play each other's devil's advocate all the time. So I think we have a positive relationship, and I have no concerns about getting elected with a different team.
As the independent candidate, I have no choice but to work with whoever else would be elected. This is perfectly fine by me. My general approach to working with others is to see how our strengths complement each other and how we can cover each other's weaknesses. I've already formed relations with a number of other candidates, such that I would feel comfortable with virtually anyone who is voted in.
Hi. Hello. Okay. So my question's about the club's library. So I was part of a club that was on the committee in the summer planning for the club's library, and one of the things that we discussed was actually having volunteers from the clubs themselves like run the library so that it could be open for more hours. So I'm just wondering why that's not something that seems like it's being implemented, and why it's just the club's support team that's running them. All of them.
Thanks for the question, Phil. And that's definitely not something we have ruled out. Like the library is currently in the process of being ready. Once it's ready, we can definitely figure out whether it's going to be solely the club support team. As Matt mentioned, there's only so many hours we can do with the club support team, and if we need more volunteers, I'm pretty open to the idea of having clubs provide volunteers for that.
Okay, so I think it's interesting that we've been talking about this for a year and we're not sure exactly how we're going to implement it. I think there's a huge opportunity with volunteers running it, because that would essentially allow them to hold office hours. That is something that clubs is really tough for them to do right now. It's something that they would likely be able to do with a new student building, which Team Gold wants to bring forward to referendum, but this may be a short-term solution to allow them to have office hours.
I'm definitely in favor of having volunteers. That would allow for so much more collaboration among clubs, and something that I think is not quite at this stage of development, because it seems to be taking a while to develop. I would definitely support it, but I believe that we need to get the coordinators figured out first. Thank you.
So my vision for the Fed's library would actually require that every club that has media stored in the library or some form of equipment would have to have one representative from their club serve as a volunteer, so that someone in their club has key access so that items can be returned after hours.
Okay, thank you everyone, and that wraps up our last debate of the executive debate. Thank you VP Internal candidates, and now we're going to be moving on to the Senate debate. Can I have all senators who are participating in the debate up at the front, please? I just want to thank all the executive candidates for coming out to the debate. I enjoyed all the participation, and I also want to turn it to students to also say, as much as everyone here is promising different and bigger things, I also want to call to students to also step up to the plate and engage with feds as well. It is a two-way street, and we really want to work with you. Thanks. So you both will have 30 seconds each for opening remarks and 30 seconds as closing remarks. I'll have a couple questions for you. It's 1 minute each to answer the question, and then we'll have 2 minutes if you'd like open debate or if you'd like to just go on to the next question. You're not competing for the same position, I don't believe, right? No. So you're welcome to just talk about the same thing or different student issues. It's just more time for you to talk. Okay? So you can go 30 seconds, open debates. James, you can go first.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Koo. I will be running for the HS Undergraduate Senate position for the term 2015-2017. My goals as a senator are two things. One is I'd like to increase the representation of AHS by making informed decisions by consulting with undergraduate students, graduate students, and faculty staff. And the second thing is I'd like to increase the accountability of senators by creating Senate reports and holding my actions accountable.
Pallavi, is that how you say your name? Okay, you can go next.
All right. So hi, my name is Pallavi, and I'm running for the Engineering Senate position for 2015 to 2017. My campaign really has two main focuses, the first being representation and transparency, and the other one being inclusiveness. I really just want everyone to be aware of what's going on within the Senate discussions, and I want everyone's opinion to be heard. I feel that my experiences with the Engineering Society as well as ambassadors have given me a lot of skills that will make me a very qualified candidate for this position.
Thank you. Okay, so first question for both of you. What is one inefficiency of Senate from the perspective of students? And so we'll have Palvina answer first, and you have 1 minute to answer.
Yeah, so I think one inefficiency in terms of the students is that students aren't becoming very active within Senate. They're not very informed about what's going on. In fact, most people I know don't even know what Senate really is. And what I'd like to do is make it easier for students to be aware of what Senate is discussing, who is in Senate, and how they can have their voices and their opinions heard. I'd like to do that by making sure that students are engaged through various forms of media, specifically social media, and just making sure that students know who to approach if they have any questions or concerns.
I definitely agree with what Pallavi said. In previous years, the HS student body has been uninformed in terms of my opinion about the actions of Senate and what actually goes on in Senate. Speaking to a few members of council and even the student body, they all express concerns with the actions in Senate. And my main goal is to make sure that this doesn't happen. I want to make sure that there's a transparency of Senate representatives, and creating Senate reports does that job.
Okay, would you like open debate, or do you think you said your thoughts? Okay, we can go to the next question since I see no issues there. Could you explain the purpose of Senate? So James, take it away.
Well, in my opinion, University Senate, they govern and establish the educational policies of the university. And for me, this includes recommendations to the Board of Governors regarding organizational and structural changes within university staff, and determining standards of admission, course program requirements, and yeah, educational stuff.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I mostly agree with what James had to say. Senate is very involved in making sure that students are represented and making decisions on both the educational and also student life issues that students will face.
Okay, thank you. Would you like open debate? Okay, we're good. Okay, next question. We're flying through this one. If you could sit on any one of Senate's subcommittees, which one would you choose and why?
Okay. Well, personally, I can say that I haven't been to a Senate meeting, but I am committed to making sure that I do take the time to understand all of the committees found in Senate, and personally, I have been part of the Internal Administration Committee, the Presidential Administration Committee, Advisory Committee on Feds, and I'd like to use those committees as a kind of a learning step towards the things that I've done for Senate as well.
Pallavi?
Also like James, I haven't been on Senate before and this will be my first time. One issue that I really want to work with, and I assume that there would be a committee for that, is working with all the different student groups that are present on campus. I think that there is a lack of communication within all these groups, and I think that that's something we really need to work upon because at the end of the day we all do go to the same university. So that's one of the committees that I would really like to work on and help improve.
Okay, thank you. We are on our last question, so you're almost off the hot seat. If you had to bring a student issue forward at the next Senate meeting, what would you talk about?
All right. Well, one of the things that was brought up this year for in Senate was the fall reading break. I do agree with students in that there should be a fall reading break, but I am concerned that professors will put midterms and assignments right directly before reading week, and this would totally, in my opinion, defeat the purpose of reading week. And I really want to make sure that we can sort of develop a policy or some form of discouraging motion to discourage pre-reading week midterms and assignments.
One thing that I would like to bring up is the resources that are available for mental health and just mental health awareness in general. Despite being here for a short period of time, it has come up a lot in a lot of different situations that I've been in where people feel that they aren't necessarily getting the resources that they feel they need. And I want to make sure that all the students here have someone to talk to, someone to go to, and that mental health awareness is definitely made known.
Okay, thank you both. I'm going to turn to the audience. Does anybody have a question from the audience for the candidates? I see one, a couple hands. So I'll give you a minute and take as much time as you want.
My name is Chanakya, and so my question is, you could have ran for executive, you could have ran for council, but what was your drive that made you decide Senate was something that you were passionate about and you wanted to do compared to like the other roles?
So the reason that I chose Senate is because Senate for me is in between council and in between executive, and that was the kind of the workload and the position that I wanted to take on. Senators have the ability to really voice the opinions of the entire faculty and also interact with the Board of Governors and help with decisions that are being made there. So for me, it was the level that I wanted to reach and the people that I wanted to associate myself with. It's also a position that I feel that I have a lot of the advocacy skills for, having been a class representative and an academic representative with the Engineering Society and serving as a commissioner with them right now, as well as the department lead for engineering ambassadors. I feel that I've gained a lot of the skills needed to voice the opinions of the student body and the engineering faculty who I will be representing.
Thank you.
Well, in terms of running for Senate, I feel like I've had a lot of experience working with the student body in terms of education. As part of HS's Faculty Undergraduate Studies Committee, we talked about various action items regarding the ELP exam and other pertinent course updates. And I feel like my opinions and advocacy of the students would be better represented in Senate than in the Defense Council. So that's why I wish to run for Senate.
Thank you. One more audience question?
Communicating with your constituents is a very important part of being a student senator. Both of you have sort of touched on how you would communicate with your constituents, but could you maybe clarify your overall strategy for each, both engineering and AHS?
All right, well, thank you for your question, Doug. I'd like to start off by saying that in terms of transparency, I really believe that communicating with reports and detailing the action items that I've taken in non-confidential sessions are highly important in not only creating some sort of engagement with the students, but also connecting the students with the university administration and the academics involved. So with that being said, I really want to list sort of like what the Feds Council report does, my goals, my objectives, and my next steps. Thank you.
All right, that was a great question. So I am aware that in the past, senators have put in reports and things like the Iron Warrior, which is the engineering newspaper, and that's something that I would like to continue. But I know that for students, that isn't a very effective means of communication. So I'd really like to work on having a lot of social media, Twitter, Facebook, and other sources, just to make sure, because that's where people really are, and that's where people are likely to voice their opinions. Another thing I'd like to do is maybe once a week or once a month stand outside the CPH foyer, which is something that I've been doing a lot for the last couple of weeks because of campaigning, and I know that that's a great way for people to just actually come to you, see your face, know who you are, and feel comfortable voicing opinions, and that's something that I would like to do.
Thank you for your answers. Thank you, audience, for your questions. And that concludes our Senate debate. Final remarks. Thank you, James. Closing remarks. You each have 30 seconds to wrap it up.
I'd like to finish off by saying, first of all, thank you everyone for coming out. I've seen a couple of faces that just stayed here for the past 2.5 hours, so I really appreciate you guys coming out and supporting student governance, both with Senate and Feds Council. I'd also like to say that between February 10th and 12th, please consider my voting for me as AHS Senate, because I value transparency and I value representation. Thank you.
All right, so again, I'd like to just reiterate that my platform is based on transparency and inclusiveness, and I really just want to make sure that students are aware of what is going on in Senate. I also want to thank you guys for waiting out here and listening to us speak, and I hope that you take a little bit of time out of your days within the next 2 days and make sure to vote Pallavi for engineering senator. Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. Thanks to everyone here. Enjoy the rest of your day. Is it weird if I